Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, this is going to be an amazing episode. We're going to be touching some heartstrings. So get your popcorn, but also get your tissues ready because we're going to be talking about overcoming grief, trauma, resiliency, addiction. So we're going to hit on all kinds of topics. And I was just on her amazing podcast. I was so blessed to have for her to have me on her show. She sent me this book. It's called "You Are Limitless." And before I get to, I want to read a portion of this. But if you guys stay till the end, we're going to give you a resource for free that have saved thousands of lives. And I'm going to give you a tip that saved my life about 2 months ago. But I want to read something from this book. It's called "You Are Limitless: Anxiety, Grief, Trauma, Addiction. 7 Inspiring Stories of Hope and Healing." But what jumped out at me the most is something that almost took me out a couple months ago. A friend of mine uh, took their own life. And this is on page 19 of the book. It says, "At some point during the night, my father consumed a lethal combination of alcohol and barbiturates. Overdose, question mark, suicide, question mark, intentional cry for help. No one really knows. I was 2.5. My brother was a baby. I have the sense that there must have been a lot of shame around his death. No one talked about it. Any mention of dad was shrouded in thick, awkward silence." So this is what stuff we're going to be talking about because, on average, up to 50 veterans and first responders take their lives every day in the United States, and they're passing on the pain to their family and their children. So that's what we're going to be talking about, how to overcome that so you don't become the next victim. So, Kate, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on your show, and thank you for coming on my show and talking about these hard subjects.
Yeah, it's an honor and a pleasure. Thank you, Richard. And thank you for reminding me about that sentence. I mean, I'm just feeling so much right now. But yeah, that was a very real experience and a very real experience for thousands and thousands of people. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so before we go any further, because I do have a traumatic brain injury, so if I don't ask the question, I will forget it. What is your definition of resiliency?
So my definition of resiliency is like a boxer in the ring, right? You kind of get in the ring and you get pounded and you get up and you get to your corner, you take a break, and then you go right back into the ring again, right? That is, that is my definition of resiliency. Getting knocked down over and over and again, brushing yourself off and getting right back up.
All right, so let's hop right into it. Because if somebody's seeing you right now, they would see, oh, she's a top selling author. She's changing the world. She's speaking, has an amazing podcast. But your whole life hasn't been sunshine, rainbows, unicorns, and Skittles. So, and obviously you don't have a New Jersey accent. So tell us
Right.
a little bit about where'd you come from, where'd you grow up, and some of the hardships that you went through that people probably don't know unless they pick up a book like that.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I'm from England originally, born and raised there, lived there until my kind of early 20s. So I call the first quarter of my life, right? The first 25 years was kind of a shit show. I mean, it started with the suicide of my father very young, which kind of threw our family into a tailspin because he wasn't set up to die, right? So he had no life insurance. We were in kind of a rented accommodation, left my mom single with 2 small children. And as you can imagine, it just sent our family into a tailspin to the point where there was food scarcity and we had to go live with relatives and blah, 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 blah. So that was a tough upbringing, so a lot of changes, a lot of moving, a lot of different schools, but also at the same time, kind of idyllic. We lived in this beautiful little hamlet in the middle of the southeast of England, in a beautiful Tudor home. Eventually, we moved in with some parents, some godparents, which was super helpful. So it's a mixture of bitter and sweet, bitter and sweet, bitter and sweet. A lot of different kind of caretakers, but also I think a community around us too as kids, which was really helpful. So that was challenging. And then my mom met another guy, and that didn't go well. He had a massive drinking problem. And again, our life kind of went down the toilet again pretty quickly with the alcoholism and the addiction and the DUIs and blah, blah, blah. We moved again, new schools, new people. And at that point, I was early teens. So you can imagine the wheels really came off.
So the alcoholism really affected your life.
Oh my God.
And I know that I'm going to let you tell your own story, but there's been car accidents in your life. There's been DUIs in your life. So usually, like I come from an addicted household. My mother was an addict. Thank God she celebrated 30 years. I'm 35 clean. But usually if somebody in the house is struggling with addiction, there's more than one person. And I always tell, listen, if you're a mom and you're a dad and you're telling your kids not to get drunk and not to get high, but you're getting drunk and you're getting high, I would rather watch a sermon than listen to one.
Yeah.
So talk about that. Talk about living in a household of addiction.
Yeah. So we lived in a household of addiction, but it's interesting. In England, the culture is a little different. So after the mass of, my father's suicide, etc., we landed and we actually lived in a pub, right? From the age of, I don't know, 5-ish to about 8 or 9, we actually lived in a pub, right, that my godfather owned. And so I was around alcohol all the time. My godfather probably had a drinking problem, but he was highly functioning. My mom probably had a drinking problem, but she was highly functioning. The guy she met definitely had a drinking problem. He was not highly functioning. So it's really been this ribbon of theme in my life. I mean, it really is crazy. As parent, I'm a parent now. I have 2 children, adult children, and I have a child that struggles with addiction, right? Even though he has lived in a completely, I'm not going to say an alcohol-free home, but if we drink, it's social drinking. I don't struggle with alcoholism. My husband doesn't struggle with alcoholism, but we both come from these families with these massive addictions, right? And that kind of funnel in and have trickled down over the generations. So it's been a theme. It's been like a thread, like through my life, even into today. I work with people more so in early recovery because I think that's just an important, fragile time. So I work with people now because I have this lived experience, and I just have so much compassion, heartfelt empathy for people and vets. Right, vets is the PTSD trauma part and the addiction, and people in recovery that are trying to get healthy from addiction. It's
All right,
big.
so let me ask you a question because when I was coming up, I was a young boy. My mom and dad were both addicts, and for me, books became my solace. That became because I can go in the bathroom, lay in the bathtub for hours on end, and just so I had the water over my ears, so I didn't have to hear the arguing. But if I read a book, it could transport me anywhere in the world. And now I've read over, I think, 6,000 books. I think I got 18 books going right now, and You Are Limitless is one of my top books of all time. So what was your solace when you were coming up? What was your escape?
Yeah, definitely outside in nature, in the natural world, like kind of getting outside, going to the South Downs, sitting in a field under the big sky and just the quiet. I just want the quiet and the birds, and I want to be able to look up and I want to be able to see space for me. And I didn't, back then as a kid, I didn't know that would be such a huge part of my healing process, but it has been, right? This connection with nature, time outside, time really celebrating and immersed in the natural world. that's been my God, if you like, right? In many ways. I mean, such a huge spiritual connection, and yeah, couldn't live without it.
All right, so let me ask you a question because I'm a father. I got three beautiful children. I got a 22-year-old boy, 19-year-old boy, and I got a 12-year-old girl. She's going on 35 right now. But every morning when I wake up, I make sure I kiss her on her forehead. I call her. I tell her she's beautiful. I tell her
Mm,
that her father loves her, and I think it's so important that fathers pour into their girls, or else they're not going to know how to be treated. And if they're treated bad when they're younger, they're going to expect that as they get older because it's just normal. It's well, I guess I'm not beautiful. Nobody loves me, so I'm going to find somebody out there that's going to quote unquote love me. So and then you grew up without your dad passed when you were young, and then you grew up, excuse my language, with an asshole. Uh, so how did that affect you as you were coming up as a teenager and then going into your early adulthood?
yeah. So a lot of anger. I mean, for me, it just came out in rage and anger, kind of self-destructive, and then also environmentally destructive. Today, I'd probably be kind of diagnosable and would have been arrested and, in the system and all the rest of it. Back then, I'm 60, 61. So back then it was different, at a different country. So it's very different today than it was back then. But a lot of anger, a lot of skipping school, a lot of really crappy decisions, a lot of high risk behaviors. Um, yeah, but not, I mean, there was a drinking spell in there when I really did hit the alcohol hard. But I have to tell you, I remember there was a moment right there. And just could see if this was going to go, if I was going to keep using substances like that, there would be even more of a mass destruction. I'll probably kill myself. So there was a self-preservation in there somewhere that I was able to kind of connect with. And then around 16, there was another massive kind of tragedy in my life. My mother was killed in a car accident by a drunk driver. And again, that was another massive pivotal moment in my life. So that, again, that's another chapter, kind of began another chapter. I left home and all the rest of it. But I don't know if that answers your
Yeah.
question, but there was definitely a destructive phase there for a while.
So, because pretty much because of my own doing, I got thrown out of my house and I became pretty much an orphan. I mean, I had to take care of myself because my mother was deep in her addiction, and I lived on the streets from the age of 15 on.
Mm.
But what is it like growing up without parents at a young age of 16? And then how do you translate it now as a parent? Because for me, I love my kids. I adore my kids. I adore my bride. I love my bride. But when
Yeah.
you don't have parents and you become a parent, you either become that all inclusive where it's all about the kids and you're just a helicopter parent, or
Mm.
you go the other way where you're like, well, I didn't have parents, so you can, I'll be here for you for now, but you can raise yourself when you hit the age of 18. So which way
Got
did you go?
I actually kind of went the self-healing therapy route, right? I didn't have kids till I was in my 30s. So I was older, right? So I think that was helpful. And by that point, I had moved countries, I'd lived in different countries. I was now living in the United States. And I had started my healing process through kind of education and therapy. And I was a lot healthier in my late 20s to early 30s than I was in that first kind of half of my life. So I think I was able to deal with a lot of the trauma, a lot of the baggage, and kind of went into this relationship with the intention of having the relationship with my now husband. We've been married, I don't know, 20 plus years, right? So I have a ton of stability now. We've been lived in the same house, we've had the same relationship. My kids have had so much structure, but I'm also able to step back from my own trauma and baggage and parent them, I think, more intentionally, right? I'm able to see them for the individuals that they are with the things that they bring to the table and step back from my own crap and kind of see a bigger picture. And I think that's so important, especially when you have a lot of trauma and addiction in the past.
All right, so like we talked about on when I was on your show, I've had plenty of aha moments or come to Jesus moments,
Yeah.
and I can remember the day before, the day of, and the day after I had my come to Jesus moment. And I always hear somebody ask, "Well, what was your come to Jesus moment?" But I always ask, what was the day before you decided I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired? What was the day like that you decided that you wanted to get help? And what
Yeah.
was the day like after the day after you decided to get help? Because there are 3 different days, but you're living in 3 different lives at the same time. I know it's
Yeah.
weird to sound it, but it is true because like the one day, okay, I'm sick and tired, I'm done. Then the day you're like, okay, I quit. Then the next day you're like, well, shit, what do I do now?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
talk to us about those 3 days.
Yeah. So there's been those days, but there's been several of those days, right? Because life isn't like this nice linear journey. It's full of stops and starts. So my first come to Jesus was honestly when I left home at like 15 and a half. My mother had just been killed. We were in the house with that person that we just had a really conflictual relationship. And at that moment, like, I cannot do this. Like everything in my body, I'm a real feeler, right? So everything in my body was saying, I cannot do this. I need to leave. And I left. I packed a bag and literally left home. I had some friends of the family, lived with them. But so the lead up to that was really difficult. That day there was some conflict, and I left, and then the day after was like, thank God I am out. I don't know what the fuck I'm gonna do. I've got no money, no resources. I'm 15 and a half. I hardly made it through high school. I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I feel better. Right? I feel on some level better. So that was the first one that stands out. And then there have been several more, right? And then the journey into therapy was I lived in Southern California in Los Angeles for a while, was like 25, 26. And I'm like, okay, I'm having this life, a good life, fun life. And then it's like, okay, I've got to do something. And I was studying, reading a lot of psychology, abnormal psych and things like that. And I decided in that day, it's like, I've had enough of spinning my wheels, being this nomad, I need to kind of grab onto something. And that's when I decided to go back to school and start the psych journey, right? So I'm a therapist, a completely fully licensed therapist. So that's when I decided to go, what am I doing in my life? Okay, I'm going to go back to school and then register for classes. And again, that was a pivotal moment when I was like, okay, I feel like I'm on that, right? I've set my compass, I have a direction. And even though it's difficult and I don't have any resources, I don't know how this is going to work out, but this feels right. So that was another pivotal moment.
All right, so let me ask you a question because a friend of mine, I'm not going to mention his name, he just relapsed. He had 6 months, on the pink cloud, as we say, going to meetings all the time,
Yeah.
and he relapsed. And I messaged him. I'm like, bro, it's okay. You've been
Yeah.
giving another chance.
Yeah.
A lot of the people that I used to go to meetings with, they're not around anymore because they didn't have that one last run in them. And I tell everybody that, and it's very controversial. People hate on me for it. I say, look, relapse does not have to be a part of your recovery. I haven't had a drink or a drug since 1989. So it
Right.
doesn't have to be a part of your recovery. But the only reason I bring it up because we talk about therapy is
Yeah.
whether you're talking to a therapist. I've been seeing the same therapist 13 years now. I've been in recovery 35, but you have to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's home, whether it's with the therapist, whether it's with yourself, because if you're not being
Oh,
honest with your therapist, they can't help you.
that's right. That's
So
right.
talk about how important being honest with yourself, but also honest with your therapist or even your sponsor if you're going to meetings. How
Yeah.
brutal honesty is what's going to keep you sober.
Yeah. So I guess the first thing I want to say, and I hear you and honor the fact that you haven't had a relapse in your whole journey over 3 decades, which is incredible and amazing. And I also want to honor that every single human and their journey is completely unique. So
Yep.
that's works for you, but it might
Yep.
not work for Joe and Bob and Sally, etc., etc. So I think that's where the honesty comes in, right? And again, we talked on the show on my Living Big Mindfully podcast. We talked about these kind of points where you have a decision, and that's where the self awareness and that self leadership, if you like, there you go, that's where that comes in, right? Learning, and I think this is missed. I think this is missed in schools and in programs and in, all of it. I think it's missed helping people learn that if you can quiet down enough, there is a moment where you do this can decide or you do have a choice. And that takes self-reflection, self-awareness, and a moment of intentionality. And that question is like, okay, what do I really want here? And that's not a thinking question. That doesn't come from the frontal cortex. That comes from the body, right? You're dropping that question into the body and you're listening to the wisdom. We all have the wisdom. We all have it, right? We all have this wisdom. You're dropping that question in. Okay, what do I really want here? And you notice what comes up, right? The first thing that comes up, right? And then you have a choice, right? Then you can make a decision. Do I want this path or that path? So recovery, relapse is often a big part of people's recovery. You are probably the exception, right? If you listen to your friends and you took a survey and all the listeners check the box, I don't know what the stats are. 80% of people probably have several relapses in recovery. So I think relapse is part of recovery and it has to be worked with, right? There's no shame, there's no blame. I had a guy in the office literally Tuesday, been in recovery 9 months. He's struggled. He's an amazing human being. He had a relapse and we kind of knew it was coming, right? We kind of knew it was coming and it happened and we worked through it. But there's no shame, there's no blame. And that's where the honesty comes in, right? He was able to come in, his little tail kind of between his legs, right? And he said, Kate, I have to tell you this, right? Let me get the first thing off the table. I relapsed and we went through it. We dug in, we learned, and he's back on track and out the door and has more skills because of that. Because of that relapse, he now has more skills, more strength, and more self-awareness.
Okay, so now also, I pretty much think that Heath Ledger had one more run in him. Matthew Perry probably thought, hey, I'm just going to go hang out in the jacuzzi, get high a little bit. I'll be okay tomorrow. And for me, my thought process, and we talked about this on your amazing podcast, is my thought process is I drink, I die. That's it. There's nothing else to it. For me, if I drink, I die, because I know if I have one more drink, I'm not coming back. I ain't coming back. So what I do is, like, me and my wife went to the bowling alley yesterday to watch my daughter bowl, and we grabbed some sodas and some pizza. My wife has tasted everything that's gone in my mouth for the last 15 years. If I go out, even if I order a Diet Coke and it's not in a bottle or a can, she tastes everything that goes in my mouth. She makes sure that when she makes cookies for me, it doesn't have vanilla extract in it that has alcohol. She makes sure that when she orders my Scope or whatever mouthwash, it's alcohol free. So for me, everything is depending. I don't want to go back to day one for eating a frigging cookie.
Right.
So, you know what I mean? So I think it has to be that important to somebody to want to live, because even a smoker say, if I have one more cigarette, I'm going back.
Yeah. And I do agree. It's the first drink, right? It's the first drink or the first joint or the first hit or whatever, right? It's that first. If you can keep that hard no, right? We all have a go and a no-go kind of part of the brain, right? But they can be very easily manipulated, especially if you haven't dealt with your crap, right? Especially if you're still stressed and anxious and the trauma's all in there. It's so easy, right, for that little stinking thinking voice to go, just have one, just this, just that. And the first one is the worst one, right? It's game over from the first one. So but I think we have to acknowledge that. We have to work with that. And I think that's part of being human. I think we have people in recovery have to work with that. And again, it goes back to honesty, self-awareness, really being intentional, having a team, right? There's no I in recovery, right? I don't think I can't spell, but there's a team. You have to have a team. I really believe in a team approach, whether it's AA or your therapist or some kind of other community. I think community and team is really important.
Well, and I think, and my personal opinion is why my friend relapsed. One of the reasons is I was taught. Now, my sponsor, he's an old, crusty guy. He's like, listen, bro. He's like, if you don't want to get a haircut, do not hang out in the barbershop. And my friend would keep saying, oh, I'm just going to go to the pub for some chips just to watch soccer. And I'm like, you're sick. You're 6 months in. You
Yeah.
need to stay away from people, places, and things in early recovery. So
Yeah.
talk about what it's, because there's a difference between the life I live now because I live intentional. But when you're that first year in recovery, they say you shouldn't be start new relationships, start new jobs. You need to watch out for people, places, and things. So talk
Yeah.
about the slippery slopes
Yeah.
of early recovery.
Yeah. So I personally see it. So I have, again, lived experience. I see it in my family and also in the people that I serve. Is it really the triggers are the big ones are the people, places, and things every time, right? I mean, I could go back and track. Okay, it's going to that gas station where you used to buy that 12 pack and picking up, a Mars bar or something, right? That's a trigger. It's hanging out, right? I had a guy again, a young guy, 27, in the office the other day, and he was talking about some of the relapses that he's had, and they've all been connected when he's been online. He's been playing video games with the old crowd that he used to snort with and use with, right? So it's okay. That is people, places, and things. So it's really crucial. You've got to dial in, you've got to be aware, and you have to set some firm boundaries around these people, places, and things. You've got to use new associations, new friends, and new things to do, right? Yeah.
Okay, and the reason why I asked that because I quit at the age of 20. So I started at 11, I quit at 20. So I quit before most people start. But for me is once it was January 2nd, 1989. I'm 20 years old and I'm hungover and I'm still drunk and I'm sitting around eating nasty cookies, drinking nasty coffee, hanging around with 55-year-old guys. And I'm like, how am I going to do this? I'm 20 years old. I got nobody to hang out with. So I had to change, and it wasn't their fault. They knew how to have fun on the weekends, but still go to work on Monday. Where for me, the party just continued all week. So what do you say when a person says, well, I'm so young, how do I find new people? How do I how do I recreate my life?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. And I love that word. I like to use it, rebuilding, right? There's a lot of, in that first year, there's a lot of rebuilding because there's often this kind of trail of mass destruction. And now you got to rebuild. And one of the things is getting that support system dialed in, get online. I mean, right now we have this internet thing, right? And you can join a meeting 24/7, 7 days a week online, anywhere in the world, right? I mean, that's true. I mean, there's smart recovery, there's AA, there's the rooms, right? All these resources. There is no excuse. So that's one thing. Get out there, get online. You don't even have to show up. You can be completely anonymous, right? You can just get in, plugged in, get some support. So that's one thing. The second thing, again, because we are so global, there's all these meetups, right? There's all these kind of sober living communities, there's sober meetups. Get involved, find a group that you like with a younger crowd, right? Again, going back to this guy I was helping in the beginning of the week, that's what's part of his journey. He found a meeting with some younger guys and they just have this beautiful sober recovery. They go out, they play frisbee golf, they do bowling, right? They're there for each other if they're struggling. But he took a while, but he found a really great fit. And that's part of his AA community, so it's out there. But again, you have to have the one, right? You got to take the action. You can't just sit there and think, oh, I wish this, and oh, I wish that. Blah, blah. You have to take the A word, right? The action, right? You've got to want it enough to take the action.
Okay, so and also I think once I got sober, and of course you go through anger, you go through grief, you go through all this, but eventually, and I'm at the point now where if I look to my left, I have a refrigerator downstairs in my office. It's got beer, it's got wine. It's not for me. I just don't drink. So for me, it's not even the thing. But I know you can see some people. It's kind of like when you meet somebody that just quits drinking. They're kind
Mhm.
of like when you meet a vegan, somebody that's a vegan, and you're like, they got to tell everybody, I'm vegan. I don't eat meat. I'm like, so, if I go out, I'm not going to be like, I don't drink. So, like for me, I'll call the waiter over and I'll be like, I need help. I can't have anything with alcohol in it. I'm allergic. I tell them I'm allergic. And
Yes.
then they're like, what do you mean you're allergic? And I'm like, listen, I'm allergic to alcohol. I break out in handcuffs. And they're like, okay, I get it. So, but for me, it's like if my wife, if somebody, my friends wanted to drink around me, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's them. It's not me. But so talk
Yeah.
about getting over that anger and that grief because you can't handle it because you have an allergy.
Yeah, yeah. So I think there's a couple of things there. So I mean, I think we all have baggage, and I think if you had an addiction, right, you spent some time addicted, you probably have grief, you probably have loss, and you probably have some kind of trauma. It might not be a big T trauma like war veterans, or first responders or emergency room people, but there could be this kind of low T trauma, right? The disappointments, right? The time in jail, the losses, the fact that the grief for your life is in just such a freaking shambles, right? So that's a low grade trauma. We got to work through that. I really believe we have to work through some of that low grade trauma. What I call the developmental trauma, right? Again, I'm not a parent blamer, but the stuff nobody gets through childhood without something, right? Either from family or from school or from church or from sports, right? So it's really learning, right, to kind of heal the wounds, hear the feelings, hold the feelings. So we can really live intentionally because what you're describing is that you set your compass every day, whether you're aware of it or not, and you set your compass, and that's your intention every day, right? You get up with that intention, and that's what's in your heart, it's what's on your mind, that's where your energy is. And that's where we kind of have to get to, but we got to deal with all the other stuff first.
Okay, so Kate, let's talk about this. Is I know my triggers. And when my friend relapsed, I messaged him on Facebook. I'm like, bro, I'm here for you, but what were your triggers? He's like, I
Mhm.
don't know. Like, you got to figure that shit out.
Yes,
Because once you figure out what
yes,
triggers you,
yes.
that's when you're. Because I told him you're either working on recovery or you're working on a relapse.
Yeah,
And
that's
for
right.
me, in recovery, I know. For me, if I'm hungry, angry, lonely, or tired,
Yeah,
I'm heading for a relapse.
yeah,
So talk about how important knowing your triggers
yeah,
are.
yeah. This is a great conversation. I'm so glad you're bringing it up, right? And again, I'm going to go back to this man that had the relapse, right? He's been 9 months in recovery. He had the relapse last week. And we sat in that office together for an hour and we took probably an hour, right, to dig through and dig out what was the trigger. Like, what was the trigger? And for him, it was feeling stressed and overwhelmed, and there was some loneliness, right? So we were able to kind of unpack, get to the core, and then kind of again hold those feelings. Like he was able to have the tears, right? He was able to kind of process this sense of loneliness and the sense of really feeling overwhelmed. It's a really tough time in his life right now, right? A lot of external stresses. We were able to do that. We were able to kind of get to the unconscious, because this is the whole thing. If you're not conscious of your triggers, you're being led by the nose and you can't be intentional, right? Those things go together, right? They're like little building blocks. You have to know what's going on in the inside to be able to make these choices and set your compass intentions on the outside every single day. And again, that's why therapy or coaching or that self-awareness is so important.
All right, now, but also I think we have to be honest. And he calls his girlfriend or whatever he calls her a partner.
Mm,
My wife, she's my bride. She's my best friend. But I noticed for the last couple of days, I've been sleeping late, and and then, I've been acting like an asshole a little bit, and she'll just look at me. She's like, and I'm like, oh. She knows, that okay, he's in a depression. He's in a little bit of a funk. So she'll be like, listen, you've been sleeping a lot lately. You've been kind of nasty. You might need to go to a meeting,
Yeah.
or you need to start doing something. So how important it is for the people around you to know,
Yeah.
even them to know what your triggers are.
Yeah. I think it's really important. I think, any kind of addiction is honestly, it's a whole system thing. It doesn't just affect the one person, right? It affects the whole system. And when I talk about system, it's the family, the friends, the work environment. It really affects everybody. So if you can, again, begin to kind of create some relationship, build back the trust, because there's probably a lot of trust that's been broken, right? Start to build back the trust, but your family or your support people become part of your team, right? It's identifying who's my team, who's going to call me on my shit, and who's going to hold me accountable, and who's going to say, man, I think you've really been biting your nails a lot and you feel really agitated. What's up? Is there anything I can do to help? Talk me through it, blah, 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 right? Somebody, one person that can you can have that connection with, have that relationship with, is vital. You can't do recovery by yourself.
Yeah, and I have to say, Kate, like my wife, she's seen the best of me, she's seen the worst of me, and there's been times, even that 2 months ago, when I almost took myself out, where I'm just like, honey, I just want to lay in bed. I just want you to put your arms around me. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to. I just need you to hold me.
Yeah.
Until this, and that's why I always believe that you have to have that one person,
Yeah.
who, no matter who it is, that can calm the beast
Yeah.
when you need it. But you got to be honest with that person and say, listen, I'm
Yeah.
struggling. Like, if people know me on my social media, if I'm having a bad day, I'm going to put out, listen, guys, I'm struggling today. And people like, wait a minute, if Rich is struggling, it's okay to struggle.
Yeah.
But you just
Yeah.
have to be honest and let people know I'm struggling today, and it's okay to struggle, right?
Right. Absolutely. And I love what you said about your wife, right? And that ability just to be with that another human. And what I connected with was this complete, like, unconditional love, right? I mean, that's really what you're talking about. She can hold you with this kind of unconditional love. It doesn't have to be words. It doesn't have to be explanations. It can just be like this warm blanket that can be so soothing, so soothing. And I know that everybody maybe not be getting that, but some version of that person that you can show up with, be honest with, be vulnerable with, be angry with, say nothing to, and just kind of be held. And I don't really mean physically always, but just held in that energy, right? Of, I love you, I've got you, well, I'm here for you. It's so important.
All right. So now, I don't know if you noticed this, but I'm writing stuff down, and I do that because uh, I lost 80% of my vision about a couple years ago. So I'm still recovering, but my hearing got better, not according to my wife. But you said the word intention 11 times now.
Probably. It's my
So
thing.
I want to talk, because somebody is 3 years ago, New Year's Eve, somebody says, I want you to pick two words for this upcoming year. And my two words were intention and attention. Those are my
Mm.
two words for that year. And then for this year, it's intention, attention, and retention.
Ah.
So let's talk about intention, because, like, we're talking now. I'm not thinking about what I have to do later. I'm not thinking about, okay, I got to release an episode by blah blah blah. I'm in the moment, and I try to be intentional with everything I do, and that's including um, having a calendar where I
Mhm.
make sure that I run my calendar and my calendar doesn't run me. So talk
Yeah.
about how the difference between living an accidental or living an intentional life.
Yeah.
Talk about intention.
Yeah. So for me, the difference is being kind of led externally, right? So allowing all the external crap that we all have to pull you in 1,000 directions. So the external crap becomes kind of in control, if you like. It's calling the shots. It's pulling you here and pulling you there and grabbing your attention and your energy, blah, blah, blah. So living in what I call and kind of an intentional heart-centered life is really, again, like we did earlier, right? It's taking that breath. It's generally, for me, it's in the morning, right? First thing in the morning, you take that breath and you just kind of like imagine you're just literally internally, you're setting your compass for the day, right? So I'm not talking about goals and action plans and steps and blah, blah, blah. I don't care about that. That can all go to hell in a handbasket. I'm talking about taking a breath. If you can, put your hands on your heart and just say, okay, what is important for me today? How do I want to use my time today? How do I want to spend my energy today? How do I want to show up today, right? And again, those aren't logical thinking questions where you're getting all these answers. These answers come up from the body, right? So for me, when I set my intention every day in the morning, it's like it's always I want to impact others and live a heartfelt life, right? That's always my intention. It comes up every day. I want to impact others positively and live a heart-centered life and help others live heart-centered lives, right? But it comes from within. So it's based on your own personal values, right? Your own personal journey, your own personal uniqueness, right? It's not based on what everybody else thinks you should be doing. It's more about what you feel is right for you. Authentic, right? It's an authentic energy. It's that heart-centered. That is the heart-centered life. So there was a lot there, and I know it sounds really woo-woo, but I have to tell you, it's been a game changer for me. Total game changer.
I totally agree. Like, and I was talking to somebody. Most of the people that I talk to that are high performers say no a lot more than they say yes.
Yeah.
Like for me, and I wrote it down, and if it's not God, family and friends, or business, I'm probably going to say no. Because I know I only have a certain amount of bandwidth. So I can't be doing everything for everybody if it's not going to be in those 3 or 4 things. So talk about how important saying no is. And when you say no, it's not a sentence. It's a period. You don't have to say no, but no, maybe. No is no. Yeah. So talk about the importance of no.
Yeah, I love the firm but kind, right? I love setting boundaries. I think boundaries are really important. But I'm not big on the cancel culture. I think boundaries have got a little out of control with this cancel culture. I think it's too much. Yep. But going back to the topic, I feel like if you can learn the language, there's some people, again, who've been in families with addiction and now have addiction, they haven't learned some pretty basic skills. They haven't learned how to self-regulate. They haven't learned how to say no. And they haven't learned really how to kind of care for themselves because they're so busy caring for everybody else. They haven't had a chance, right? So part of setting boundaries and part of saying no is really caring for yourself. And it's being true to your intentionality, right? If it doesn't fit with what your intention is for the day, then it's probably, sorry, but no. Or maybe I can't today, but maybe we could look at it tomorrow, right? It doesn't always have to be the hard no. And of course, it depends what it is. Every situation is different. But you can say no, and you can say, but we can look, right? No, but that counts as well. I don't like the but word, but in that case, I think it's really helpful, especially if it's family and a loved one, right? And you're trying to set a boundary, but you don't want to kind of do a hard no. There's ways to do that.
But now let's talk about the power of the 5. And I know people talk about it all the time, but I really believe it that if I'm hanging out with 5 guys that are cheating on their wives, hanging out at the bar every day, I'm probably going to be number 6.
Yep.
But if I'm hanging out with 5 guys that value their relationships, value their children, value their businesses, and they're successful, I'm more than likely going to be number 6. Yeah. So talk about how important the people you hang around is, and sometimes cutting somebody out of your life, you may love them, but we don't have to hang out. Sometimes it's addition by subtraction.
Yeah. So I'm even going to bring that back to intentionality, right? Like living a heart-centered, intentional life. So you, again, is kind of going inside and getting clear on the people that lift you up, right? Like who in your circle is lifting you up, right? And then those are the people that you would choose to kind of connect with and spend more time with. Because remember, energy matches energy, right? And if you're surrounded by kind of loving, kind of high vibrational people that are all kind of supporting you and going to the same kind of direction, thumbs up, it's all good. If you're surrounded, like you said, by people that are not, and they're just stressed and anxious and full of angst and negativity, it's like, oh, no, thank you. And again, you get to choose, right? You get to choose, you get to discern who you want to hang out with, who feels good, right? Who's matching your energy and who isn't. And I love the circles, right? Because we got our inner circles, that's super intimate people. We got the next circle, kind of family, extended family. And then we got the outer circle, which is kind of colleagues. And then we got the way outer circle, which is everybody else, the barista, the supermarket person. So be mindful, be intentional about where you're putting these people in that circle. Just because they're out on the outer circle now doesn't mean that, oh my gosh, I'm never going to speak to them, they're canceled. It means like, okay, that's going to be a hi, a how are you every now and again. That's okay, right? Because again, you have to do what's right for you. And for me, I just want to kind of heal and care for others, regardless of where they are. So that would be, for me, I'd be kind, I'd be respectful, but I'd also limit contact, right? Then again, you get to choose. You get to choose that.
And when I moved here 15 years ago to New Jersey, I had my wife, my then girlfriend was the only friend I had. Literally, my
Yeah,
Facebook page, I had one friend, and
yeah,
that was her.
yeah.
But then I had to sit back and I'm like, why don't I have friends? And it came to me, or somebody might have said it maybe, but in
Mm,
order to have a friend, you have to be a friend.
yeah,
And that's when I started thinking, okay, maybe I have to build relationships. I have to build trust. And there's people I know now that I can call Eric, or I can call one of my other I can call Joe, and I'd be like, bro, I need your credit card. They'll be like, all right, here's the number. What do they won't even ask what you need it for. They're like,
yeah,
I got you, or I'll come pick you up. What do you need? You need a plane ticket? I'll send it over.
yeah,
But it took years to build up those relationships. And normally, when you're just getting into recovery,
yeah.
you pretty much shattered
Yes,
all these relationships, and it
right.
takes time to build them up, and time takes time. So,
Yeah,
how do you start building real relationships
yeah.
and not just on all facade stuff?
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that's such a great point. So, I mean, I actually have a lot of lived experience because I've moved so much, right? I've lived in other countries and literally packed a bag and moved from London and lived in Spain for a year without a soul. I didn't know a soul. And then moved from Spain back to England and then England to the US again without a soul, right? So I really am pretty good at these rebuilding things. And I think that's okay, right? I think there's learning in everything, even the shit. There's learning in the shit and learning in the pain and learning the discomfort. And as you grow, right, through the loneliness, through the isolation, through being in a brand new country completely by yourself, there's learning there, right? And it's taught me to build relationships, right? It's taught me to have a good compass radar for people, right? Who's safe, who isn't. And again, that's a body thing, right? Picking up the vibe, who's icky, who's creepy, kind of thing. Do a lot of that. And then it's like learning. You make eye contact, you smile, you say, hey, I really like that. It's a great color on you, right? Most of my friends now in the United States have come from a Facebook group or yoga class or some kind of other kind of work situation. But again, they're built over time. And going back to that inner circle, I have 2 or 3 people, like my cornerstone people in that inner circle, and that I treasure. I have one from England that we've been friends forever, 2 people here, and another woman on the Washington, right? But we are soul sisters, if you like. I know I can call any of those people anytime, day or night, and get what I need, whatever. But you don't need many, right? We don't need tons of friends and tons of likes and tons of this and tons of that. We need 2 or 3 core solid people. And those relationships take time. But everybody was a stranger first, right?
Yeah, and like for me, I don't call them followers. I call
Yeah,
them friends. I don't have followers. I have friends,
yeah,
but I also have my inner circle. I got my
yeah.
tight, I call them my amigos. They know who they
Mhm,
are. And I
mhm.
always say I'd rather have 4
Yeah.
shiny quarters than a
Oh,
100 dirty pennies.
100% every day of the week.
All right,
100%.
so now what's something I want to talk about, and well, a couple of things I want to talk about.
Okay.
I love that you're educated, and I love to talk about educated people. Even though I'm not one of them, I don't have the school education, but I do believe in the RAS system, which I learned from Ed Milet, Tim
Mhm,
Ferriss, Tony Robbins. That and I started because I started reading, getting into self development, and then I read about Think and Grow Rich, and then I'm like,
mhm.
well, who did they learn from? And then I went back to his teachers and the Carnegie brothers, and something that they said is, your obsessions become your possessions. So they were
Mm,
talking about the RAS system before anybody even knew what the hell an RAS system is. And
mhm.
I try to tell everybody the RAS system that your body has. It's like your Facebook feed. Whatever
Yes.
you heart and like, you're going to see. So
Yeah.
whether it's success or failure, whatever
Yeah.
you look for, you're going to find. So
Yeah.
let's talk about the RAS system, and let's talk about how you will eventually find what you are seeking for, that your
Yeah.
obsessions become your possession.
Yeah. I love that. And so for me, the word I use for that, so we call it kind of confirmation bias, right? So what is in your mind, what is in your attention, right? We've all heard that story. You go to the dealership, you think, oh, I really want that red Honda, right? And then you leave the dealership and all you see is red Hondas, right? That is the example of that. And that is true. And again, I'm going to bring it back to this intentional living. But if you are living intentionally, you are kicking in, you are activating that RAS system, if you like, or you're that kind of confirmation bias. So again, I look at it like an energy attracts energy. So if every day I'm putting out this energy, I'm clear about what I want, I'm clear about my vision, I believe, and research shows us, and we have a piece in the brain that will lead us somehow to that. And I can give you, 2 or 3 examples, recent examples where that has been the case for me, and it's been the case for others. I've seen it over and over and over. It's possible, it is a thing. And again, it comes back to living intentionally, really being clear about what's important to you.
And okay, so let's also talk about manifestation, because I'm a
Okay.
big believer. I'm a big believer in it. And like I have on my phone, I have a vision board that I had the Bahamas and Atlantis has been on my vision board for the last 10 years.
Okay.
We just got back
Uh,
from the Bahamas
Yay.
in Atlantis on
Awesome.
on the exact pontoon boat that I have in that picture. But
Beautiful.
I kept thinking about it for the last 10 years. Now,
Yeah.
people would say, okay, I understand that, but my wife is deathly afraid of water. And
Mm.
she decided we're going to go on a cruise to Atlantis because that's all I've talked about for the last 10 years. So, and we're going back in November. So we already have another trip booked. So
Beautiful.
talk about how important what you see every day is, what you hear every day, and
Yeah.
what you say to yourself every day. How
Yeah.
important is manifestation?
Yeah. So again, these are just words, right? These are just, I love language, I love words, but these are just different words, right? The RAS system, confirmation bias, manifestation, blah, 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 right? They're all the same words, I believe, for intentionally setting your energy, setting your compass, getting clear for what you really want, right? They're all the same words for a process that honestly we can't really put language on, right? We can't really put like basic human language on confirmation bias and the RES system and manifestation. It's an energy, right? It's an energy. It comes from the body and it kind of does its thing and it kind of attracts like, right? Energy attracts energy. So I've used that myself, many things, some things recently, a trip I've been trying to get on and suddenly was able to get the permits and we're going in September. It's like, okay, that was on my list and it just keeps giving. It's just, I'm not going to say it's magic because you have to do work. And again, I believe you have to kind of clear the vessel, right? Again, it goes back to clearing the blocks, clearing the trauma, clearing the negative beliefs, the limiting beliefs, all the BS in the brain, right? All the little parts that want to beat you up and put you down, right? It's kind of clearing all that through so you can kind of set your compass in the direction that you want to go. And it's just kind of cool.
All right, so let's talk about gratitude. Because I'm a gratitude guy. And this is something that I've done that's changed my life. And it was something I was taught by my friend, Mr. Patrick Mudge, who retired Navy SEAL. When I go to bed at night, every night, unless I fall asleep ahead of time, I wrap my arms around my wife and I pray for her. I pray for her happiness. I pray for her health. Because I realize you can't be mad at somebody you pray for. So it's kind of hard. And then before I go to bed, I think of 3 things that happened during my day that I'm grateful for. Like this interview is going to be probably number 1 or 2 of things that I'm grateful that happened during my day. And then I just say, God, thank you. Thank you for letting me live another day. And then when I wake up in the morning, if I can see something, because I lost my vision a couple of years ago, I sit up and I say, Lord, no matter what challenges I have, what good you have for me, what bad you have for me, today's going to be an amazing day. So before my feet hit the ground, I went to bed with gratitude and I've woken up with gratitude. But also, like when I clean my bathrooms and my kitchens and everything 3 times a week. And when I'm cleaning my toilet bowl, I'm saying, Lord, thank you. Thank you that I have a toilet bowl.
That's beautiful.
But also, thank you for the beach house that's coming, because I know that if I appreciate what I have, more things are coming, because what you appreciates.
Yeah.
So, talk about gratitude, because I had David Meltzer come on my show. He owns a $20 billion company. They made the movie Jerry Maguire about him. And something he said is anger and gratitude cannot occupy the same spot.
Yeah. I mean,
so talk about gratitude and how important gratitude is in life.
Yeah. Let me think about this for a second. So we think about a couple of ways I want to go, I guess. So feelings, right? We think about feelings, higher vibrational feelings and lower vibrational feelings. So that the anger, right? The anger is fear, anger, that's kind of a lower vibrational feeling. The higher vibrational feelings are kind of things like love, joy, peace, gratitude, right? They exist. We don't really have language again for this, but they exist on different planes, right? It's like comparing oranges to broccoli, right? They're all something good for you, but they're different, right? So we got the lower vibrational feelings and the higher vibrational feelings. So the gratitude falls in the higher vibrational feeling, along with love, joy, peace, compassion, right? So I guess I just want to kind of separate those two into different buckets, if you like. And it is hard when your body is resonating on these low vibrational feelings, fear, joy, frustration, anxiety. It is difficult, right, to connect more with the higher vibrational feelings. You can have a little bit, right? We can all stop and say, okay, I'm so grateful for this. Thank you so much, right? But in a general sense where you're actually living that energy. You're in that energy for most of the day, right? You're in the energy of gratitude, love, you know, for peace, right, for most of the day. So again, really want to separate those two things out. And then I think the gratitude is so important. I have a gratitude practice. And again, it is that energy that's creating the energy. You know, your higher power, your spirituality. I think that's a big piece as well, whatever that is for you. And you can do that intentionally. You clearly, Richard, take the time intentionally to do that ritual in the evening, and you do it in the morning. We can all set our intention to do that, right? We can all do that. We can all choose to do that. Again, back to this decision choosing thing. We can all set our compass to choose to do that. So I would ask the listeners, the audience, take a moment, take a breath. What do you really feel like you need to put into your life to kind of raise that vibration a little bit so you can live more in gratitude, you can live more in joy, you can live more in peace versus in these kind of more difficult, muddy, heavy feelings?
Okay, but now also for me, I make sure that I have physical things that if I'm feeling a certain way, I will go to my wallet. Now I keep three things in my wallet.
Mm-hmm.
I keep my first coin that I ever got
Mm.
35 years ago. I keep it in my wallet. And also, I keep a gratitude list written down in my wallet,
Um,
but I also keep my obituary that I wrote
Powerful.
in my wallet. So, because sometimes you need something just to break your mindset. So a lot of times I tell people maybe just keep a coin in your pocket. You know,
Yeah.
if you're feeling stressed out, anger, you know, or a picture of your baby daughter when you're feeling, you know, white life's getting hard, but then you have a picture of your daughter and you look at her, you're like, all right,
Yeah.
things aren't that bad. You know what I mean? I have some things to be grateful for. So talk about how sometimes you might have to do something different to shock yourself to get out of that headspace.
Yeah. We're gonna go full circle here. So for me, it's nature, right? It's time outside. I'm not a big collector of things. So I don't have things so much, but I do have two things that are always with me, right? And also always with you if you choose to see that. I have the breath, right? I have my breath. Always I have my breath. Unless I'm dead, then no breath. And I have the ability to kind of go outside in the natural world. I can look at the sky, right? We can all look at the sky. We're all living under the same sky. I can take a minute, take a breath, go outside, look at this big sky, and just take in the wonder of it all, right? I can go outside and I can take my shoes off and I can put my feet on the ground wherever I am, concrete, sand, trail, doesn't matter. I can put my feet and put my energy on the ground. I can take a breath and like kind of reset. Now we're talking about kind of regulating the nervous system. I can reset my energy and kind of get a grip back on, again, where is my compass going? What's my intention right now? I'm like, let it go. Right. Let the frustration, the anger, the knot in the stomach, the tightness in the chest, whatever it is, just like kind of through breath and through grounding, if you like. So those are practices I use constantly, all the time, and also teach people, right? Help people, teach people. No special equipment needed, no gym membership needed, no $1 million coaching program. This stuff is simple. It's simple. You just need some help, some guidance. Yeah.
All right. So last couple questions is
Yeah.
I love this book. You Are Limitless. I got it right here. One of my favorite books. I keep it. I read it every day, and it keeps me motivated. And I listen to your podcast every day. Your podcast is probably in my top 5 of all podcasts that I listen to every day, and that includes Ed Milet, Gary Vaynerchuk, Tim Ferriss. So your podcast is way up there. Not just because I was a guest, but so talk to us about about your book, why you
Yeah.
wrote the book, and then talk
Yeah.
to us about why you started a podcast and how that's going.
Yeah. Okay. So I wrote the book. So I'm an author. I'm a therapist and an author, and I wanted to combine things, right? And I'm also an outdoors person, hike, run, kayak, all the rest of it. So I wanted to combine it all. So my first book was Never Too Late, and it really is about later in life athletes who are really great inspirational stories about people later in life. Again, to kind of say life doesn't end at 55 or 65 or 75. I mean, and these are the stories to prove it. And then I wrote You Are Limitless. Really, I think to really get the story, to get a little bit about my story out, and really to give hope and inspiration for people that are struggling with addiction and anxiety, grief, loss, and trauma, because all of those have been in my life, right? So I have this lived experience, right? As a kid, as a teen, and then also as a therapist, right? So it's bringing those things together, and it's wrapped in this lovely kind of blanket of nature, right? So all my books not only have the inspirational stories, but there's really some practical stuff, right? There's some exercises that, I honestly forget what that book talks about, but one of them talks about limiting beliefs and motivation and really how to start to kind of live intentionally. And they all have a bunch of resources in the back as well. So there's a story on the books, and the podcast is, again, just was a passion project. I wanted to kind of share inspirational stories about real people living heart-centered life, and that is the podcast. And we get some great guests, and I love connecting and really digging in and connecting with people so they can share their story, so other people can listen to the words and get something again, so they can kind of elevate a little bit, uplift their life, and maybe a word or a phrase or a sentence would touch somebody or make a difference. And that's my purpose.
One thing that I love is that, and I try to tell people, because everybody asks me, well, why'd you write a book? Why do you have a podcast? Why do you have a blog? Is because people absorb content different ways. Whether some people are audible, some people like to read. I like everything. I'm an everything guy.
Yeah.
So I like that you not only have a book, but if somebody likes to listen to podcasts, you have something that's audible for them. You're not just taking home one thing, like, well, I'm an author, and then that's it.
Right.
So how do we find your book? How do we find your podcast? Where is it, and how can we support your mission?
Okay, so first of all, because I love you and I really believe in what you're doing, I'm going to copy you. I've never done this before, so this is exclusive for your listeners. I will give anybody that DMs me or sends me an email a free download copy of You Are Limitless. Right? It is available on Amazon and everywhere else globally. But if you want a free copy, you can email me or you can DM me, and I will get a copy out to you. So that's one thing. Secondly, if you're struggling with some of the things we talked about today about kind of living and crafting a heart-centered life, I do a free kind of consult call. It's called a Living Intentionally consultation. If you want an hour of my time, no strings, let's connect, book a call, and I'll be happy to help you set your compass in a more helpful, intentional direction. I'll be honored. I love to do that, and it would be an honor to help anybody out there. The podcast is Living Big Mindfully, and everything can be found at katechampionauthor.com. And the podcast, Living Big Mindfully, is all podcast players. Wherever you go, just search it. It comes up.
Okay, so now this is a podcast. Teaching podcast. So this is the last question. And actually, it's a lady named Joanne texted me. She's like, I got to ask this question. And I'm like, all right, I'll ask her. She said, what would be your top 3 pieces of advice if somebody is struggling with addiction that they could start doing today to start get some clarity in their life?
Yeah. So 1 would be get some support. 2 would be make a plan, make some kind of a quit plan, right? Again, setting an intention, right? Really being clear, getting a quit plan, and really being clear on your why, right? Why do you want to quit? What's that about for you? And like we've talked about, getting it on paper, posting it everywhere, and looking at it 2, 3, 4 times a day. Those would be my 3 top tips.
I love it. So, guys, make sure you check out her podcast. Make sure you pick up this amazing book right here. And I love it. And it's not only this young lady, but there's several other people that have amazing stories that you can be inspired by. And guys, as you see, my T-shirt says, "Today I decide." If you guys listen to this show, you know that I love Joel Osteen. And something that he says is, we all have a choice every day when we wake up to live intentionally. We can either be a victim or we can be a victor. And if you listen to this show, you're no longer a victim of your past, but you're a victor of your present and your future. So thank you guys for always showing up. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming on today. This has been fun, and I absolutely love everything you're doing. And if I can ever do anything to support your mission, I'm in. No questions asked.
Richard, thank you. I appreciate you and love you and support you too. And just, yeah, I'm here for you, whatever you need.
All right. I love you guys, and have an amazing day. And remember, vertical momentum. The only way to go is up. I love you guys. Have an amazing week.
Take care.